Moscow summer of 1882. The sun slowly descends, painting the church domes and mansion facades golden. At the England Hotel on Petrovka, no one suspects that this evening will go down in history. 38-year-old General Mikhail Dmitrievich Skobelev, hero of Plevna and conqueror of Geoktepe, arrived in Moscow only a few days ago. His snow-white uniform and characteristic bearing attract glances. Even in civilian clothes, the white general is recognizable. On the evening of June 25th, he meets with the merchant Kokorev, discusses plans, full of energy and ideas. And the next morning, Russia is shaken by the news. Skobelev is dead. He was found lifeless in his hotel room, a man who survived dozens of battles, who had looked death in the face many times, suddenly passed away in peacetime, at the peak of his fame and career. The official version states, a heart attack, but too many questions remain unanswered. This fearless general with a sharp tongue and political ambitions had become too inconvenient for many. The mystery of his death still troubles historians and gives rise to theories, from medical to conspiratorial. Mikhail Dmitrievich Skobelev was born on September 6, 1843, in St. Petersburg, into a family where military glory was passed down through generations. His father, Dmitry Ivanovich, rose from a private cavalryman to a lieutenant general, earning a reputation as a brilliant cavalry commander. His mother, Olga Nikolaevna, came from the noble Poltavtsev family, educated and affluent people. It was from his mother that Mikhail inherited a sharp analytical mind and independence of judgment, and from his father, decisiveness and military bearing. The childhood of the future commander passed in the ancestral estate of Spasskoye Zaborovskoye in the Ryazan province. Here, amidst spacious fields and oak groves, the character of young Mikhail was formed. From an early age, he absorbed his father's stories about military campaigns, studying strategy from books in the rich family library. Stories about Suvorov and Napoleon, commanders whose methods of warfare he later meticulously studied, had a particular influence on the boy. Skobelev began his military education at the St. Petersburg Cadet Corps, where he showed outstanding abilities in sciences. This was followed by studies at the prestigious Academy of the General Staff, which he graduated from in 1868. Classmates noted his phenomenal memory, his ability to quickly analyze complex tactical problems, and his insatiable thirst for knowledge. Mikhail Dmitrievich took his first steps in military service in the Cavalry Guard Regiment, an elite unit of the Russian army. Here, the young officer quickly distinguished himself not only by his noble appearance and impeccable manners, but also by a deep understanding of military affairs. However, guard service with its parades and social duties weighed on Skobelev's active nature. He yearned for real action, an opportunity to prove himself in a combat situation. This chance presented itself in 1869 when Skobelev secured a transfer to Turkestan, a restless region on the southern borders of the empire. Here, in the sands of Central Asia, began the true military biography of the future White General. His first combat awards, his first independent decisions, his first experience of command, all this came to him on Turkestan's soil. Mikhail Skobelev met his first true combat trials in the sandy expanses of Turkestan. After graduating from the General Staff Academy, the young officer declined comfortable service in the capital, voluntarily heading to where gunpowder smoke and real action beckoned. It was here, among the dunes and Saxol thickets, that the unique command style of the future military leader began to form. Even in his first skirmishes with nomads, Skobelev displayed qualities that would later become his hallmark: coolness under enemy fire and an ability to instantaneously assess the situation. During one reconnaissance operation in 1871, his small detachment was surrounded by superior Turkmen forces. Instead of taking up defensive positions, as prescribed by classical military textbooks, Skobelev ordered an immediate attack. This unexpected maneuver so stunned the enemy that the nomads fled. Fellow officers noted the young officer's remarkable ability to connect with ordinary soldiers. He often conversed with privates, inquired about their needs, and shared all the hardships of campaign life with them. Quote, 0. Skobelev often repeated this phrase and steadfastly followed it himself. Unlike many commanders of that time, he never sent soldiers where he wouldn't go himself. A crucial feature of Skobelev's developing military style was meticulous preparation for combat operations. He personally studied the terrain, gathered intelligence, and considered various scenarios. At the same time, in battle itself, he displayed astonishing tactical flexibility, instantly adapting to changing circumstances. It was in the Turkestan campaigns that the legend of the, quote, one was born. Skobelev noticed that local inhabitants particularly feared a rider in white, the color of mourning for Muslims. From then on, he began appearing on the battlefield in a white tunic and on a white horse, deliberately making himself visible to both enemies and his own soldiers. No less important a stage in Skobelev's development as a military leader was his participation in suppressing the Polish uprising. Here, he encountered an entirely different adversary and type of warfare, demanding different approaches. Despite the harshness of the operations conducted, Skobelev displayed a humanity towards the civilian population unexpected by many, strictly forbidding looting and senseless cruelties. Central Asia, 1873. The sands of the Karakum are scorching hot. The air shimmers with heat, and Russian troops advance towards Khiva, an ancient center of slave trade and bandit raids. Among the officers, the stately figure of Colonel Skobelev stands out. The Khivan campaign was the first serious test for the young commander and his finest hour. General Kaufman, who commanded the operation, entrusted Skobelev with the most difficult and risky tasks. Mikhail Dmitrievich led the vanguard, which was to be the first to enter the dangerous sands. Here, his phenomenal ability to find solutions in seemingly hopeless situations became apparent. When the detachment began to suffer from thirst, Skobelev personally set out in search of water, covering dozens of kilometers of the scorched desert with a small group of riders. The soldiers watched in amazement as their commander, risking his life, was the first to engage in skirmishes with the enemy. During one of the battles, Skobelev appeared before Turkmen horsemen in a snow-white uniform on a white horse. This image made a stunning impression on the superstitious nomads. In their minds, white was associated with death. Ak Pasha, White General. That's what the locals called him, and this name soon began to inspire them with panic terror. After the successful completion of the Khivan campaign, Skobelev was promoted to Major General and awarded a golden saber with the inscription, "For bravery." But true glory came to him during the Kokand expedition of 1875. The uprising in the Kokand Khanate demanded decisive action, and Skobelev led a punitive detachment. It was here that his military genius fully manifested itself. With small forces, he defeated the many thousand-strong army of the Kokandians near the fortress of Andijan. Contemporaries recalled how Skobelev, noticing hesitation in the ranks of his soldiers, dismounted, sat on the ground with his back to the enemy, and calmly lit a cigarette under a hail of bullets. This demonstrative act of fearlessness instantly boosted the morale of the detachment. After the conquest of Kokand, Skobelev was appointed military governor of the new Fergana region. In this post, he proved himself not only as a military man, but also as a talented administrator. In a short time, he managed to establish peaceful life in the region, where an uprising had recently flared up. He studied local customs, respected the religious beliefs of the population, and strictly ensured that Russian soldiers did not offend the feelings of the locals. By the end of the Turkestan campaign, the legend of the White General had spread far beyond Central Asia. Now, Skobelev deliberately cultivated his image, always appearing on the battlefield in a snow-white uniform and on a white horse, becoming a living banner for his soldiers and a symbol of terror for his enemies. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877 truly became Mikhail Skobelev's finest hour. Here, on Bulgarian soil, his military genius fully unfolded, and his fame reached a pan-European scale. The beginning of the campaign found Skobelev as a major general, commanding a Cossack brigade. However, very soon his outstanding abilities led the commander-in-chief to entrust him with more serious tasks. A real test for the Russian army was the siege of Plevna, a small Bulgarian town transformed by the Turkish commander Osman Pasha into an impregnable fortress. 2 attempts at assault ended in bloody failure. It was then that Skobelev proposed his plan of attack through the Green Mountains, dominant heights, control over which opened the way to the city. The third assault on Plevna on August 30th, 1877, entered military textbooks as an example of tactical mastery. Skobelev personally led the attack on the left flank. Eyewitnesses recalled a striking scene. The general, in a snow-white uniform on a white horse, galloped ahead of the attacking columns, as if oblivious to the enemy's heavy fire. His soldiers, inspired by their commander's example, achieved the impossible. They captured the redoubts on the Green Mountains, which were considered impregnable. Despite Skobelev's success, the overall assault on Plevna failed due to setbacks in other sectors. The command decided to retreat, but Skobelev held the captured positions for 2 days, repelling furious counterattacks by superior enemy forces. Only after receiving a direct order did he withdraw his troops, saving most of his soldiers. After the fall of Plevna, Skobelev was entrusted with perhaps the most difficult task of the campaign, crossing the snow-covered Balkans in the dead of winter. It was believed that at this time of year, the mountains were impassable for large military formations. But Skobelev proved otherwise. In late December 1877, his detachment accomplished the incredible. They traversed the Shipka-Shenovo Pass, where the thermometer showed -25 degrees. The soldiers waded knee-deep in snow, dragging artillery pieces by hand along icy trails. Skobelev himself shared all the hardships of the crossing with them, sleeping in the snow, eating soldiers' rations. Descending from the mountains, his detachment suddenly attacked Vesel Pasha's Turkish army near Shenovo and utterly defeated it. This victory decided the outcome of the entire campaign. The path to Constantinople was open. Skobelev's name became a symbol of liberation for the Bulgarian people. In every village his troops passed through, local residents greeted the White General as a savior, strewing flowers in his path. Soldiers idolized their commander, ready to follow him through fire and water. Even opponents acknowledged his military talent. Turkish officers called Skobelev the White Devil and considered an encounter with his detachment a bad omen. The phenomenon of the White General cannot be explained solely by military victories. The key to understanding Skobelev lies in his unique psychology, which combined the uncombinable. Contemporaries noted a striking contrast between the commander's outward calm and his inner fire. In battle, he seemed like a block of ice, coolly giving orders, methodically building tactics, but his eyes betrayed an almost mystical ecstasy, an intoxication with danger. A distinctive feature of Skobelev's command style was a threefold formula for success. Firstly, the most meticulous preparation for battle. He personally studied the terrain, interrogated scouts, and analyzed the enemy's psychology. Secondly, flexibility of thought, the ability to instantly change plans when circumstances changed. Thirdly, personal example. He was always where the fate of the battle was being decided. Skobelev told his officers, this philosophy manifested itself in his demonstrative disregard for danger. His white uniform and white horse made him an ideal target for enemy sharpshooters, but it was precisely this risk that gave rise to the legend of his invulnerability. Psychologists of our time would probably diagnose Skobelev with a propensity for adrenaline addiction. He sought mortal danger like a drug. He admitted in rare moments of frankness. Skobelev's intellectual power amazed his interlocutors. He spoke 5 languages fluently, quoted military classics by heart, and was passionate about history and philosophy. At the same time, contradictory traits coexisted in his character. An analytical mind and adventurism, shrewdness and recklessness, cruelty in battle, and touching care for the wounded. In his relations with subordinates, Skobelev created a unique leadership model. He never demanded from soldiers what he could not do himself. Before the assault on Geoktepe, the general spent several days in the trenches with ordinary soldiers, ate the same food, and slept on the ground. Soldiers saw in him not just a commander, but an almost mystical figure, a man protected by higher powers. A special trait of Skobelev was his almost pathological ambition. He craved glory, recognition, awards. "Ambition is my main vice," he admitted to friends. This thirst for recognition pushed him to ever new feats, forcing him to seek increasingly dangerous assignments. Perhaps it was this insatiable ambition, combined with political naivete, that led him to his fateful end. The secret to Skobelev's incredible popularity among soldiers was both simple and complex. In an army where the common soldier was often perceived as mere cannon fodder, the white general saw a personality in every man. "A Russian soldier is worth more than gold," Mikhail Dmitrievich loved to repeat, and these were not empty words. He forbade senseless attacks, meticulously prepared each operation, striving to minimize losses. After battle, he personally visited the wounded, knew many soldiers by name, remembered where each was from, and who had distinguished themselves in previous battles. Officer Vereshchagin recalled an astonishing scene. After a fierce battle near Plevna, General Skobelev, covered in dust and blood, sat by a campfire with common soldiers, ate from the communal pot, and told them about the significance of this battle for the entire campaign. The soldiers listened, holding their breath. They understood. Their commander considered them not cannon fodder but comrades, worthy of knowing the overall plan. Skobelev's approach to discipline was also unusual. Instead of the corporal punishments traditional for the time, he used the power of personal example and persuasion. "I don't believe in a soldier who needs to be beaten," he would say. "If a man doesn't understand what he's fighting for, no stick will make a hero of him." On campaigns, Skobelev paid special attention to the soldiers' daily lives. He personally checked the quality of food, monitored the condition of footwear and uniforms. During a winter crossing of the Balkans, the general gave his fur coat to a freezing soldier, contenting himself with a light greatcoat. Such actions gave rise to legends, passed by word of mouth throughout the army. Skobelev's method of preparing for battle was also unique. On the eve of a battle, he would gather not only officers, but also non-commissioned officers, and sometimes even privates, explaining the plan for the upcoming operation. A soldier must go into battle with open eyes, understanding what and why he is doing, the general asserted. Military historian Zyonchkovsky wrote, Skobelev possessed the rare gift of speaking to soldiers in their language, without resorting to overly familiar behavior. His brief speeches before battle resonated deeply with everyone. With a few phrases, he could ignite such enthusiasm in people that they were ready to follow him through fire and water. In battle, Mikhail Dmitrievich was always in the most dangerous sectors. His white uniform and white horse were visible from afar, instilling confidence in his own men and fear in the enemy. Where Skobelev is, there is victory, the soldiers would say, and this was no exaggeration. The psychological effect of the legendary general's presence on the battlefield was immense. The year 1881 became for Skobelev a time of greatest military triumph. After General Lomykhin's unsuccessful expedition to the Turkmen fortress of Göktepe, when Russian troops were repulsed with heavy losses, command of the new campaign was entrusted to Skobelev. The task seemed almost impossible. To cross a waterless desert, defeat a fanatical enemy entrenched in an impregnable fortress, and finally annex Turkmenistan to the Russian Empire. Skobelev approached the matter with his characteristic methodicalness. First of all, he solved the logistical problem. He organized camel transport and laid a railway through the sands to supply the troops. Then, he thoroughly studied the reasons for the previous failure. We lost because we underestimated the enemy and overestimated ourselves, he told his staff officers. Preparation for the assault took several weeks. Skobelev personally conducted reconnaissances, often disguising himself in Turkmen clothing and approaching the fortress walls. He ordered a proper siege, digging approaches, setting up batteries, preparing mine galleries. All this time, the white general lived in the same conditions as the common soldiers, sharing with them all the hardships of the desert campaign. On January 12, 1881, the decisive assault on Göktepe began. After artillery preparation and the detonation of a mine in the fortress wall, Russian troops went on the attack. Skobelev, as always, was in the first ranks of the attackers, on a white horse in a snow-white uniform. The battle was fierce. The Turkmens fought with the desperation of the doomed. But by evening, the fortress fell. The massacre that followed the capture of the fortress went down in history as one of the bloodiest pages of colonial wars. Skobelev did not restrain the fury of his soldiers, who remembered the defeat of the previous expedition. "The Asian respects only force," he said. "The more merciless we are now, the less blood will be shed later." For 3 days, Russian troops pursued the fleeing Turkmens, destroying everyone who offered resistance. According to various estimates, 6,000 to 15,000 people died. This cruelty caused a mixed reaction in Russian society. The liberal press accused Skobelev of excessive cruelty, while military circles justified his actions as military necessity. Skobelev himself did not hide that he acted harshly. "I adhere to the rule that the duration of peace is directly dependent on the sharpness of the blow inflicted." And indeed, after the fall of Göktepe, the resistance of the Turkmens was broken. Soon, the Akal-Tekin oasis became part of the Russian Empire, and Skobelev received the rank of General of Infantry and the Order of St. George, 2nd degree. Behind the brilliant military victories of Mikhail Skobelev lay a man with deep political convictions. His worldview was shaped by Slavophile ideas and personal experience in the liberation of Balkan peoples. After the Russo-Turkish War, Skobelev increasingly spoke out on political issues, causing concern at the imperial court. The white general became a symbol not only of military valor, but also of a certain political direction. At the core of Skobelev's political views was the idea of Slavic unity. He believed that all Slavic peoples should unite under the patronage of Russia to counteract German influence in Europe. Quote zero, he said, paraphrasing Pushkin. The general was particularly alarmed by the strengthening of the German Empire after its victory over France in 1870. Skobelev saw Bismarck as the main adversary of Slavdom and Russia. Quote, he asserted in private conversations. Skobelev's anti-German stance intensified after the Berlin Congress of 1878, when Russia, despite its victory over Turkey, was forced to make significant concessions under pressure from European powers. The general considered this a national humiliation and the fault of Russian diplomacy, which was too oriented towards Germany. In January 1882, Skobelev delivered a famous speech to officers in St. Petersburg. Petersburg, openly criticizing Russia's foreign policy and calling for more decisive support for the Balkan Slavs. This speech displeased Emperor Alexander III, but was enthusiastically received in Slavophile circles. A real scandal erupted after Skobelev's speech to Serbian students in Paris in February of the same year. In this speech, the general not only reiterated his anti-German theses, but also hinted that some high-ranking officials in Russia were acting in Germany's interests, not their own fatherlands. If Russia sometimes does not live up to its Slavic calling, it is not because it does not understand its interests, but because foreigners are at its head. This phrase was perceived as a direct challenge to the ruling dynasty and government. The Paris speech had the effect of a bombshell. The European press accused Skobelev of warmongering, and Russian authorities were forced to officially distance themselves from his statements. The general was urgently summoned to St. Petersburg for explanations. Despite his disgrace at court, Skobelev's popularity in society grew. His political speeches found a warm response among various segments of the population, from simple peasants to the intelligentsia. Many saw him not just as a military leader, but as a potential political leader capable of changing the country's course. Slavophiles and pan-Slavists considered Skobelev their banner, while conservative circles feared his growing influence. If this man wanted to, he could turn Russia upside down, one minister said. Indeed, the combination of military glory, popular love, and vivid political ideas made Skobelev a dangerous figure for the existing government. It was at this moment, at the peak of his popularity and in the midst of political battles, that the life of the white general unexpectedly ended. With each new victory of Skobelev, not only his glory grew, but also the apprehension of the imperial court. Even under Alexander II, the white general evoked mixed feelings in the highest circles. His military merits were acknowledged by all, but his independent character and growing popularity in the army and society worried many. Too brilliant, too independent, too loved by the people. This is how one courtier characterized Skobelev in a private letter. After Alexander III ascended the throne, the situation only worsened. The new emperor, striving to strengthen autocracy, viewed any manifestations of independence with suspicion. Skobelev, however, emboldened by military successes, increasingly allowed himself to speak on political issues, going far beyond the competence of a military commander. The general's anti-German stance caused particular irritation. Alexander III, despite his Slavophile sympathies, sought to maintain good relations with Germany. Skobelev, however, openly called the Germans the main enemies of Slavdom. "Many at court have German roots," said Minister of Internal Affairs Count Ignatiev. Skobelev's speeches are perceived as a personal insult after the famous Parisian speech, where the general effectively accused the government of betraying Slavic interests. The emperor's patience ran out. Skobelev was urgently summoned to St. Petersburg. The meeting with Alexander III was short and cold. According to eyewitnesses, the emperor directly pointed out to the general the unacceptability of political statements. "Do what you know how to do. Wage war. Leave politics to those whose duty it is." After this conversation, Skobelev found himself under unofficial surveillance. Secret police agents tracked his every move, recorded all meetings and conversations. The writer Nemirovich Danchenko, a close friend of the general, recalled, "Mikhail Dmitrievich knew about the surveillance and treated it with irony. He even greeted the agents, whom he had already learned to recognize in the crowd. However, beneath the outward calm lay deep anxiety. In one of his last letters, Skobelev confessed, "They want to remove me from the path. I hinder too many with my directness." These words acquired an ominous tone after his sudden death. The authorities were particularly concerned by the love for Skobelev shown by ordinary soldiers and officers. Minister of War Vanovsky reported to the emperor, "In some regiments, portraits of General Skobelev hang next to portraits of Your Majesty, which is absolutely unacceptable." There were cases when soldiers refused to remove these portraits even by order of their superiors. The last months of the White General's life were marked by growing isolation. He was not invited to important meetings, bypassed for awards, and restricted in movement. In fact, the brilliant commander found himself in disgrace while maintaining immense popularity in society. On a February evening in 1882, an unusual audience gathered in a Parisian hall on Rue Saint-Germain. Serbian students studying in France eagerly awaited the speech of the legendary Russian general. Mikhail Dmitrievich Skobelev, the hero of Plevna and conqueror of Göktepe, arrived in Paris on a private visit. But his presence in the European capital could not go unnoticed. When the White General ascended the makeshift podium, the hall erupted in applause. No one present suspected that the next half hour would become a turning point in the fate of the celebrated commander. Skobelev's speech began with traditional assurances of the Russian people's fraternal love for Serbs and all Slavs. However, the tone of the speech soon changed dramatically. If Russia has not yet fulfilled its Slavic calling, the general's voice rang with barely suppressed excitement. These words, publicly uttered by a high-ranking Russian military leader, sounded like a bombshell. Skobelev continued, growing more and more impassioned. Particularly audacious was the direct accusation against the Russian government. The journalists present in the hall feverishly wrote down every word. The very next day, excerpts from Skobelev's speech appeared in leading European newspapers. The reaction was instantaneous and tumultuous. The German press accused the Russian general of warmongering. French newspapers with thinly veiled pleasure quoted the anti-German passages, and Austrian diplomats demanded official explanations from the Russian embassy. In St. Petersburg, Skobelev's Parisian speech caused a real stir. Alexander III was enraged to the extreme. Quote, 5. The emperor declared at a meeting of the State Council, Foreign Minister Gears urgently issued an official statement emphasizing that General Skobelev's views were his personal opinion and did not reflect the position of the Russian government. A dispatch flew to Paris, demanding the general's immediate return to Russia. Skobelev was summoned directly to the emperor for explanations. The meeting took place in early March and, according to eyewitnesses, was extremely tense. Alexander III coldly listened to the general's justifications and stated directly, "You have forgotten your place, Mikhail Dmitrievich. Military men should fight, not engage in politics. Your speeches damage Russia's international standing." After this conversation, Skobelev was effectively disgraced. He was removed from active service, denied new appointments. The general was placed under covert surveillance. Secret police agents tracked his every move, recording all meetings and conversations. The Parisian speech became a watershed in Skobelev's fate. From a national hero, he suddenly became an inconvenient figure for the authorities. However, his popularity among the public only grew. Slavophiles and pan-Slavists enthusiastically quoted his statements, and student youth saw in him an expression of patriotic feelings. For many, Skobelev became a symbol of resistance to German influence and bureaucratic inertia. June of 1882. Moscow greets Mikhail Skobelev with uncharacteristic heat and wary attention. After the Paris scandal and a cold reception from the emperor, the White General finds himself in a strange position, formally not in disgrace, but not in favor either. His popularity in society reached its zenith, yet the doors of high offices closed before him more and more often. In St. Petersburg, Skobelev spent several weeks in agonizing anticipation. Meetings with ministers and Grand Dukes brought no desired results. No new appointments were foreseen. "They keep me on a leash, like a dangerous beast," he complained in a letter to his sister. Finally, unable to bear the inaction, the general went to Moscow, where he had business and old acquaintances. On June 24th, Skobelev stayed at the England Hotel on Petrovka Street. The room on the second floor was spacious and cool, a salvation from Moscow's stuffiness. On the same day, he paid a visit to the famous industrialist and patron Vasily Kokorev, with whom he shared a long-standing friendship. Kokorev, a man of patriotic views, always enthusiastically supported Skobelev's ideas. The meeting lasted several hours. According to Kokorev's recollections, the general was in high spirits, joked a lot, and made plans, the industrialist later recorded. Nothing foreshadowed the tragedy. Returning to the hotel in the evening, Skobelev sent several letters, had dinner in the restaurant, and, according to staff testimonies, received an unknown lady in his room. This was the last meeting of his life. The next morning, June 25th, the servant who brought breakfast found the general without signs of life. Doctors pronounced death from, quote, "4." He was only 38 years old. The strange circumstances of the last evening raised many questions. Who was the mysterious visitor? What did they talk about? Why did a healthy, vigorous man suddenly die without apparent reason? The hotel staff told contradictory stories. Some claimed they heard a loud argument. Others, that the general was completely calm. The floor attendant allegedly saw an unknown woman leaving Skobelev's room late at night, but did not remember her face. Particular suspicion was aroused by the fact that the body was found not in bed, but on the sofa, fully dressed. On the table nearby stood 2 glasses and an unfinished bottle of wine. At the same time, there were no signs of violence or struggle in the room. The St. Petersburg authorities reacted with astonishing speed. Within a few hours of the body's discovery, high-ranking officials and police arrived at the hotel. The room was sealed, and all of the general's belongings were seized for thorough examination. The autopsy was performed on the same day with remarkable haste. The official conclusion stated, "Death occurred from heart rupture due to excessive physical and nervous exhaustion." However, the full text of the medical report was never published, which gave rise to new rumors. The official version of Mikhail Skobelev's death was announced immediately. A simple and convenient explanation for the sudden demise of a 38-year-old general in the prime of his life. However, from the very beginning, this version raised doubts among many contemporaries. Skobelev was known for his excellent health, withstood colossal physical exertion, and never complained about his heart. Quote, wrote General Kuropatkin, a close associate of the quote, in his memoirs. Suspicions were further fueled by the unusual haste with which the autopsy was conducted, and the full text of the medical report was never published. Documents concerning the circumstances of Skobelev's death subsequently disappeared mysteriously from the archives. The first alternative version emerged almost immediately: poisoning. Many pointed to the mysterious lady who visited the general on the last evening of his life. According to one version, she was a German spy acting on Bismarck's orders. The Iron Chancellor had every reason to fear Skobelev, who openly called for war with Germany, asserted historian Tutishchev. No less popular was the version about the involvement of Russian authorities in the death of the inconvenient general. After his Paris speech, Skobelev became a serious political problem for Emperor Alexander III. His popularity in the army and society grew, and his anti-German statements undermined the official foreign policy course, wrote Minister of Internal Affairs Count Ignatiev in his diary. There is also a more mundane version related to the general's personal life. Skobelev was known for his romantic escapades. Perhaps the mysterious visitor was simply a jealous lover, and death resulted from an overdose of aphrodisiacs, which the general allegedly took to maintain his virility. An interesting version was put forward in the 20th century by historian Kashirin. He believed that Skobelev could have been a victim of revolutionary narodniks. Despite his liberal views, the general remained loyal to his oath and, in the event of popular unrest, would undoubtedly have stood up to defend the existing order. Eliminating a potential suppressor of a future revolution could have been part of the radicals' plans. Finally, one cannot rule out the version of natural death, but with different causes than stated in the official conclusion. Modern doctors, having studied the description of symptoms, suggest the possibility of an aortic aneurysm or thromboembolism, conditions that 19th-century medicine could not diagnose with sufficient accuracy. The name of Mikhail Skobelev did not vanish with the death of the commander. On the contrary, his posthumous fame overshadowed his renown during his lifetime. In popular memory, the image of the White General acquired almost mythical features: a defender of Slavdom, an invincible warrior, a patriot who was not allowed to fulfill his destiny. Ordinary people refused to believe in the hero's natural death, creating legends about his return in Russia's hour of trial. In the pre-revolutionary period, the memory of Skobelev was carefully preserved. In 1912, a magnificent monument by sculptor Samanov was erected in Moscow's Tverskaya Square. The bronze general on a rearing horse became one of the symbols of the capital. In the army, regiments and military academies bore his name. The 4th Turkestan Rifle Regiment proudly called itself, quote, "One," and its officers wore a special badge depicting the hero. The influence of Skobelev on Russian military thought is difficult to overestimate. His tactical methods were studied in academies, and his principles of dealing with soldiers became a model for many commanders. The quote trained a whole generation of officers who distinguished themselves in the Russo-Japanese and First World Wars. General Brusilov, author of the famous Breakthrough, repeatedly admitted that he considered himself a student of Skobelev. The October Revolution changed the attitude towards the figure of the, quote, "Three." The monument on Tverskaya was demolished. and Skobelev's name disappeared from history textbooks. However, even in Soviet times, his military genius was recognized by professionals. Marshal Shaposhnikov, in closed lectures for the command staff of the Red Army, analyzed Skobelev's operations as a model of military art. The revival of interest in the personality of the commander began during the Great Patriotic War. In the film, quote, an episodic character appeared, a young officer Skobelev, presented as a successor to Suvorov's traditions. And in 1944, the Order of Skobelev was established, which was awarded to particularly distinguished officers, though after the war, it was preferred to forget about it. The genuine return of Skobelev's name to Russian culture occurred in the post-Soviet period. In 1994, a museum opened in his ancestral estate, Spasskoye Zaborovskoye. Streets in many cities of Russia and Bulgaria are named after the general. In the 2000s, artistic works dedicated to the, quote, five appeared: novels, films, documentary projects. Skobelev's image in art underwent an interesting evolution. In pre-revolutionary literature, he was depicted as an ideal hero without flaws. Soviet authors, if they mentioned him at all, did so as a czarist satrap. Modern works strive for a volumetric portrayal of the personality, with all its contradictions and complexities of character. The phenomenon of Skobelev is an unfinished song of Russian history. A man who could have changed the fate of the country departed suddenly, leaving behind only questions and legends. In his short but brilliant life, as if in a drop of water, all the contradictions of 19th century Russia were reflected: the striving for greatness and the fear of change, the thirst for freedom and the shackles of tradition, heroism on the battlefield and intrigues in the corridors of power. Skobelev was more than just a talented commander. He embodied a special type of Russian military genius, a combination of strategic thinking with an understanding of the common soldier's psychology, a scientific approach to military affairs with an intuitive feel for battle. His methods were ahead of their time. What he did instinctively later became the foundation of 20th century military doctrines. Skobelev's reflections on the relationship between the army and power sound particularly relevant today. He was the first to realize the danger of turning the military into a blind instrument of politics, devoid of its own voice and moral compass. The army is not only the shield of the state, but also its conscience, he said, causing bewilderment at court. The mystery of Skobelev's death is not just a historical detective story. It is a symbol of the tragedy of Russian history, where too often bright, independent personalities turned out to be unnecessary or dangerous for the system. From the Decembrists to the dissidents, Skobelev's fate fits into a long line of Russia's unfulfilled opportunities. What would have happened had the white general lived another 10 or 15 years? Could he have become the leader who would have steered the country onto a different path, avoiding revolutionary upheavals? Or would the system have inevitably ground him down, as it ground down other reformers? We will never know the answer. Today, studying Skobelev's life, we better understand the complexity of the relationship between a hero and power, an individual and the state. His fate reminds us that the greatness of a country is created not by impersonal institutions, but by brilliant people capable of thinking and acting against the odds. And at the same time, it warns of the danger of a system that fears such people more than external enemies.